A very good morning to you all. Today I will be taking the class on rhabdovirus. In this group, we have the most important virus, the rabies virus. As all of us know, rabies is a zoonotic disease. It is known worldwide and it is also known to be a fatal infection in the humans. There is no specific anti-rabic agent and therefore prevention becomes very, very important. Coming to the introduction of the rabies virus. It belongs to the family of Rhabdoviridae. Rhabdos meaning rod-like structures. It is derived from a Greek word. It is known to cause the fatal disease rabies. Under the family of Rhabdoviridae, there are two genera, the vesiculovirus and the Lissa virus. Rabies virus falls under the genus Lissa virus. There are also other viruses which belong to this genus, but of which the rabies virus is the most important one. Rabies virus, it causes a rapidly progressive acute infectious disease of the central nervous system in humans as well as in animals. It is basically transmitted through another rabid animal. Coming to the morphological appearance of the rabies virus, it has a very different shape when compared to the other viruses. It is a bullet shaped virus, as you can see in the picture, with one end being rounded and the other end is planar or concave. It is an enveloped virus. The envelope is lipid in nature, containing a bilayer covered with a transmembrane glycoprotein spikes, which is represented by the capital letter G. It stands for the glycoprotein spikes. The nucleocapsid, it shows a classical helical symmetry, which contains the single-stranded RNA, the negative sense single-stranded RNA, which is unsegmented. Coming to the antigenic properties of the rabies virus, there are two antigens, the glycoprotein G and the nucleoprotein N. The glycoprotein G, it is the major antigen. It binds to the acetylcholine receptors present in the neurons. As already told you, this rabies virus primarily affects the central nervous system. So it binds to the acetylcholine receptors in the neurons. It is responsible for the neuroinvasiveness of the rabies virus and it is also strongly antigenic. Therefore, it elicits the production of neutralizing or protective antibodies. Coming to the nucleoprotein N, it is a group specific antigen. This is also antigenic and produces antibodies, but it is not protective in nature, but it is very important in making the diagnosis of the rabies infection. Okay, coming to the infection, rabies. Rabies is again derived from a Latin word rabidus, which means very frenzy or scary. It is a recognized zoonotic disease worldwide. The disease in human beings is also referred to as hydrophobia. Why it is called so is because the infected person exhibits fear of water. Though he is very thirsty, he will not be able to drink water. The pathogenesis of the rabies infection, the transmission. The rabies infection is usually transmitted by the bite of another rabid animal or sometimes also through bats. There has also been recordings of the non-bite exposures such as just licks on open skin or through corneal transplantations. The host. Mammals are the natural hosts of rabies. There are also certain reservoirs for the rabies virus who harbor the virus but sometimes do not have the infection. So there are raccoons, the striped skunks, and the silver-tailed bats, which are known to be the reservoirs of the rabies virus. So these are the sequence of events that take place once a rabies virus has entered into the body following the bite. First, the saliva with the virus is deposited in the wound. So for example, if a rabid dog bites any human, the rabies virus is present in the saliva. So the saliva with the viruses is deposited into the wound, that is the site of bite. So what happens following the bite is the virus multiplies in the muscles and the nerves locally, following which the virus now travels through a classical centripetal spread, that is from the periphery to the center. It starts spreading along the motor nerves, then it reaches the central ganglion, dorsal root ganglion of the spinal cord, wherein it replicates again. At this stage, that is during the centripetal spread, the virus is traveling at a rate of only 12 to 24 millimeter per day. So the travel rate is very, very slow. The only symptom that the patient will present is just pain at the site of bite, with no other symptoms that is seen. Rabies infection has a very long incubation period of about 20 to 90 days. So now, after it has reached the spinal cord, then it enters into the central nervous system. Once it is into the central nervous system, its travel rate increases fast. It travels at a rate of 200 to 400 millimeter per day. So you can see the drastic difference between the two rates. So in the central nervous system, the virus infects and multiplies in particular regions of the central nervous system, that is the hippocampus and the cerebellum. So during this course of disease, the patient develops encephalitis. So once it is in the central nervous system, after that it replicates there, then there is a centrifugal spread, that is from the center again back to the periphery. Centrifugal spread along the nerve trunks back to the salivary glands and also to the other various tissues, such as it can be to the eyes and also to the skin. So now the virus is again being shed in the saliva, milk, and also other secretions like in the urine. So these are the sequence of events or how the virus travels and it is shed. The spread of the virus, similar explanation is in a pictorial representation. Following the first step is following the bite of an animal, a rabid animal, the virus gets inoculated into the muscles. Then there is viral replication in the muscles and the nerves, that is local. The virion enters the peripheral nervous system. Then there is a passive ascent, that is a centripetal spread via the sensory nerves. Then there is replication in the dorsal root ganglion of the spinal cord, rapid ascent in the spinal cord. Finally, it enters into the central nervous system, wherein particularly it affects the cerebellum and the hippocampus. Following the multiplication there, then there is a centrifugal spread from the center to the periphery, and then it starts spreading to the tissues. It could be the discharge of the virus again in the salivary glands, urine, milk, eye, and also into the skin. Coming to the clinical manifestations of the infection, it has 4 different phases. The first one is just the incubation period. Then there is what is referred to as a prodromal phase, the acute neurological phase, and then finally it is coma and death. The incubation period, on an average, the infection has an incubation period of 20 to 90 days, during which period the patient is completely asymptomatic. Again, the incubation period is less than 50 days if the patient is bitten on the head or neck, or if a heavy inoculum is transferred through multiple bites. In contrast, if a person with a scratch on the hand may take a longer time to develop the symptoms of rabies than a person who receives a bite on the head. The rabies virus during this period is protected from the immune system, and therefore no antibody response is observed during this phase. During this phase, the virus is just traveling from the periphery to the central nervous system. Coming to the next phase, that is called as the prodromal phase. This ranges from 2 to 10 days. During this phase, it is an indication that the virus has entered into the central nervous system. The only symptom that the patient will present with is just pain and numbness, that is paresthesia at the site of the bite. Along with that, he might just have vague symptoms such as fever, headache, nausea, vomiting, and also myalgia. Next, coming to the most important phase of the infection, that is the acute neurological phase. This period is associated with signs of developing CNS disease. The duration is for about 2 to 7 days. It has two different parts in this neurological phase. The first one is referred to as the furious rabies, and the other stage is the paralytic rabies. So what happens in the stage of furious rabies is the patient develops agitation, he is very hyperactive, he is very restless, there is a lot of confusion with hallucinations, and then there is also what is known as the hydrophobia or the aerophobia, which is very classical of the rabies infection. Even with an attempt to drink water or having just air blown over the face produces severe laryngeal or diaphragmatic spasms, resulting in a sense of choking. So therefore the patient has a lot of fear for water and also for just air being blown on the face. It comes to such a stage that even the sound of water trickling down will bring about fear in such patients. Followed by the furious rabies, there is a stage of paralytic rabies, wherein the patient is completely quiet. It is referred to as also the dumb rabies. He goes into a state of flaccid paralysis and then gradually goes into coma and death. The death of the infected individual is basically due to respiratory failure, which occurs within 14 days. Within 14 days of the neurological symptoms. Coming to the laboratory diagnosis. The specimens that can be collected in a case of rabies, it depends whether the individual is still alive or he has died because of rabies. So therefore it is known as ante-mortem, that is before death, and post-mortem is following death. So in the ante-mortem cases, the ideal samples of choice are the corneal smears, as the virus is shed from different secretions, we can take accordingly. So the corneal smears, the skin biopsy, that is from the site of bite, saliva, and also the central CSF fluid. In the post-mortem cases, we can take the brain, in particular again it is the hippocampus and the cerebellum, and look for the classical presentations of these inclusion bodies, which are referred to as the Negri bodies. So we subject these samples for different methods to make a diagnosis. First one is the microscopy, wherein we make an impression smear of the brain tissue. This is in the post-mortem cases. The stain of choice here is a cellular stain, and once we stain the smear with the stain, we look for the Negri bodies. Again, these Negri bodies The first picture, it is a picture showing the Negri bodies. So what are these Negri bodies? They are a finely fibrillar matrix along with the rabies virus particles. They are referred to as the intracytoplasmic inclusion bodies, measuring about 2 to 10 microns in size. They are particularly found only in the neuronal tissues. They will not be found in the non-neuronal tissues such as the corneal, saliva or the skin specimens. Coming to the other method of detection, that is the antigenic detection. We do a direct fluorescent antibody testing, which is known as the gold standard for rabies testing. Here we are going to use a specific monoclonal antibodies in a specific method to demonstrate the rabies antigen in the clinical specimens. Next, we have the isolation of the virus, wherein either we can use an animal, in particular it is the mouse which has been chosen. The sample is inoculated into the mice, and then the mice or the mouse develops encephalitis and the animal dies. Nowadays, since we do not do any kind of animal experiments, the various cell cultures are used. In particular, we use a baby hamster kidney cell lines and look for the various cytopathological effects. We can also do an antibody detection, wherein we identify the different antibodies by doing an indirect immunofluorescent test, hemagglutination inhibition test and a complement fixation test. Lastly, the molecular method, that is the RT-PCR. Again, the second picture, you can see the direct immunofluorescence testing, the antibody testing. You can see the apple green fluorescence. Coming to the treatment of rabies. Rabies is 100% fatal. Okay, once a person develops a rabies infection, if it is not taken care quickly, if supportive treatment is not given timely, then rabies is 100% fatal. But at the same time, it is also 100% preventable. So what are the different measures that we take once a person is bitten by an animal, a rabid animal? We can divide it sequentially. First of all is the local wound treatment. Then we need to vaccinate the patient and also give passive immunization. So what do we do in the local wound treatment? Immediately following the bite by a rabid animal, we need to scrub the wound thoroughly with soap and water, following which we need to use aqueous solutions of iodine or alcohol. It is infiltrated with these solutions. Then we can also give a topical anti-rabic serum, provided the wounds are very, very severe and large. We can also give them TT injections and also at the same time put the patient on antibiotics to prevent any secondary bacterial infections. The most important thing that we need to remember during wound treatment is we never suture the wound. However big it is, suturing is always contraindicated. Coming to the vaccination, the anti-rabies vaccine. Rabies is the only disease where post-exposure vaccination is employed successfully. Why this happens is because of its long incubation period. So as we all know, in various other infections, the vaccines are given before and then the infection is prevented. Whereas rabies is the only case wherein following the exposure, the vaccine is given. So there are anti-rabies vaccines. It falls into two different categories, the neural vaccines and the non-neural vaccines. As the name itself tells you, neural vaccines, they are prepared from nervous tissues. So they are prepared from suspensions of nervous tissues of the infected animals These were the first kind of vaccines which were prepared by Louis Pasteur. They are of three different types: the Semple vaccine, BPL vaccine, and the infant brain vaccine. Nowadays, these neural vaccines are not used because they have a lot of disadvantages than the advantages. So the disadvantages of these are the neural vaccines, they themselves are encephalotogenic. The vaccines itself can cause encephalitis in the injected individual. They act as poor immunogens as they contain more of the nucleoprotein N and not the glycoprotein G, which is supposed to be the protective antigen. And it is also known to be associated with certain neurological complications. So therefore they came up with the development of the non-neural vaccines where nervous tissues are not used. So what is used instead? They are again of three different types. They are the egg vaccines, the tissue culture vaccines, and the recombinant viral vaccines. What are these egg vaccines? It is the purified duck embryo vaccine, and also they are live attenuated chick embryo vaccines. These egg vaccines, they are very cheap, but at the same time they have a disadvantage of again being poorly immunogenic, and also multiple doses needs to be administered to get a good antibody titer. So again, these days we don't use the egg vaccines. So what are we currently using? They are the tissue culture vaccines. They are the most recommended vaccines. They are very immunogenic and they are devoid of any neurological complications. So there are three types: human diploid cell vaccine, the purified chick embryo cell vaccine, which is grown in the chicken fibroblast cell line, and the purified Vero cell vaccine, which is again grown in the Vero cell lines. There are certain recombinant vaccines. A recombinant wherein a glycoprotein subunit is cloned with another protein carrier, that is the vaccinia virus. They are known to be very protective when injected in the animals, but in case of the humans, they are still under the experimental stages. So what is the dosage of these different vaccines? In particular, I am talking only about the tissue culture vaccines. All the tissue culture vaccines, they have the same dosage both in the adults as well as in the children. So again, we divide them depending on what kind of individuals are receiving these vaccines, whether it is the post-exposure individuals or the pre-exposure. I'll tell you what pre-exposure is. The post-exposure prophylaxis, they are given 5 doses, that is on the day 0. The day 0 stands for not the day of the bite of the animal, but the first injection that is given to the individual. So you give it on day 0, the 3rd day, 7th day, 14th day, and the 30th day. Following this injections, it gives a protection for a duration of 5 years, during which any exposure, that particular individual will require only 1 or 2 booster doses, depending again on the severity of the bite. But once the 5 years duration is over, again if the person has been bitten by a rabid animal, he needs to take the complete 5 doses again. So how are these injections given? They can be given either by the intramuscular route with a quantity of 0.5 ml or by intradermal route, wherein you give 1 ml of the injection. Of late, we have this Rabipur, which is a purified chick embryo cell vaccine, which is very, very effective against the rabies infection. Passive immunization. As we all know, passive means ready-made antibodies which are injected into the humans. So, following infiltration with the rabies immunoglobulin soon after the exposure. So, once a person comes following bite, history of bite with a rabid animal, along with the first dose of the vaccine, we also give the rabies immunoglobulin. So what does this immunoglobulin do? This rabies immunoglobulin, it binds to the rabies virus, bringing about neutralization of the virus. So once the virus is neutralized, it has no scope for traveling up into the central nervous system. So at that stage itself, you are going to save the patient. So there are two types of immunoglobulins, the equine rabies immunoglobulin and the human rabies immunoglobulin. The most preferred one is the human rabies immunoglobulin, because we have very less reports of the hypersensitivity reactions. This table shows us the categories, different categories of risk. So there are three types of categories depending on whether the animal has just touched, licked or bitten hard into the skin. So depending on that, whether we need to start the vaccine or whether we need to give the immunoglobulins. So this table explains that. So coming to what is pre-exposure prophylaxis. Pre-exposure prophylaxis, it is particularly given to individuals who are dealing with animals. So it could be the dog handlers or any other kind of animal handlers. And also to the doctors, the veterinarians who are treating animals, whether they are infected or not infected. And also to travelers who are going to endemic areas. So they know that they could come in contact with a rabid animal, so therefore it is known as pre-exposure prophylaxis. In these individuals, again it is the tissue culture vaccines which is of choice that is given. It is given, only 3 doses needs to be given on day 0, the 7th day and the 21st or the 28th day. Again, route of administration is either by the intramuscular route or the intradermal route. One thing that needs to be kept in mind is these individuals need to monitor the antibody levels every 6 months. Once they know that their antibody levels are falling, they need to take their injections. That's how they will be protected. Thank you.